we're going to talk about the new multi-APK feature. We're going to talk about the license server and anti-piracy. And then we're also going to talk about in-app billing. And in-app billing is very exciting because it is the #1 way for people to make money through user transactions on Android Market. So, Android Market is open for business. Is this translation okay? Anyone? Is this kind of right? Did Google get it wrong? Give me a show of hands. All right. You can publish as many times as you want. Users have access to your applications right away. And most importantly, you control the price and the distribution. We don't try to get between you and your customers and say, we're going to have a sale, we're now going to give you less money. Okay, you control all of that. You control publicizing your sale. If you want to sell your application for less money, that's fine. If you want to sell it less money somewhere else, that's fine. We give you control to interface and talk and manage the relationship with your customer. And it's pretty easy to get started. We start by desarrollar. Better, right? We develop. Okay? We give you the Android SDK. We give you development resources and sometimes even people like us. And then you have to register. You create your account. You look at the developer distribution agreement, which is kind of important because there's stuff there that everyone should read about. And there's also a secondary agreement about the way you interact with the market. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And then, of course, if you want to sell things, you have to get your merchant account created. And then finally, we publish. And we submit and sign the APK. We put filtering options, and then we look at marketing and promotions. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So here are the assets. Now, these are very important, these screenshots and promotions, because this is how users on Android Market see your application. You know, this is your brand. This is your ability to get them to download your application. If something is terrible and it goes on this page, people aren't going to download your application, and we're going to say, you know, that search result clearly was not the right one. That's not what the user was looking for. They didn't download it. So this is going to turn into a direct correlation between whether or not we're going to show your application when a user searches for it. Listing details are very important. One thing is that a lot of people only upload applications in English, which is crazy, because there are people all around the world with Android phones. And we actually look at this and we say, you know, if a user in Japan is looking for an application and there's no Japanese listing, well, what's going to happen when they see this? You know, there's a good chance they're not going to understand it, even if it is English. And most importantly, the phone looks like a very foreign presence to them if they don't have these listings translated. So we're going to automatically mark down. We're automatically going to reduce the relevance of an application that doesn't have a Japanese translation, because we want to make the experience better for the consumer. Oh yeah, I did translate that. I stopped doing this. I fell asleep last night, and it just became too much work to actually keep running every slide through Google Translate. Publishing options. Let's talk a little bit about copy protection. This is an old feature. As you can see, it has been deprecated. And the reason is that it doesn't actually work. It's one of those things that was a really great idea early on, and that will mean that you will get 1 stars by lots of people on Android Market. So it's a really good way. Checking that box means get 1 star. So yeah, don't do it. So we try to make it easy for users. We give all sorts of ways for users to interact with Android Market on the device. We have, of course, the application. We have the widget. You can actually create links to the market, deep links. And we also have the home screen quick search box. And that's the last translated slide. As I said, at that point, I fell asleep. So where do users find Android applications? Well, mostly they find them on the device. This is what we've learned. You know, the features section is great. The just-in channel, a little bit. There's a lot of applications every day. Thousands of applications every day come into Android market. So that channel is pretty quick. Things go in and out. Top paid lists, editor's choice. All these different things that we provided to allowing you to see applications in Android market, as well as off the device. And this is really important because a lot of people neglect this. But everyone who writes an app, if they're proud of it, they should make sure that blogs know about it. They should have a YouTube video. They should certainly have a website. Because market is only one place in which you should be promoting your applications. So this is another really important thing. A lot of people don't know this. But how many people out there, first of all, have written an Android application? And how many of you out there have an Android phone? All right, that's good. I like that. How many people have published an application on Android market? By show of hands. All right. Has anyone implemented market analytics? All right, good. So that's one. Everyone should implement analytics because you want to know who your customers are, and you want to know how they got driven to download your application. And this is kind of cool. We actually allow you to create a URL on this web page, which is on that link that's up there. And with that, you can actually track. You can find out what drove them to your application. You get an intent when the application starts, and that lets you know this. So it's a very, very important feature, and I always like talking about it. And you don't actually have to use Google Analytics with this feature. You'll get the intent anyways. But Google Analytics nicely wraps it for you. But whatever you do, use some analytics package. So ranking in Android market. So I talked a little bit about the international signal. And there are a couple of seats in here if you want to walk over people. So feel free to grab every seat. I guess we should have used the bigger room. It's great to see all you guys here this morning. I'm not quite awake yet. So basically, we don't talk too much about exactly how ranking works. And the reason is twofold, or maybe three. That's one thing. And two, it constantly changes. So if what might game the system last week and what might work won't work the following week. But here are things to remember, is that we want to know whether users are interested. Our goal with Android Market is to drive users to downloading the best application that meets their needs. And we know their needs because we know things like their location. We even know things like the phone that they have. Not that we use that yet, but we might. And more importantly, we know what other users think about those applications. And we want to know whether a user takes that application and puts it on the phone and uses it for months, or whether they put it on the phone and uninstall it immediately. These are all things that are important. So how do we improve this ranking? Well, one, and this is common sense, build a really awesome application. I mean, when an application sucks, it's not going to get rated well, users aren't going to download it, and no one's going to find it. So we start off by building it. Secondly, we need to show people that it's there. So we talk about all that marketing stuff. And I'm actually an engineer, so I'm actually not very good at marketing. So everything that's on these marketing slides came from someone else. Other people told me this worked for me or this didn't work for me, and so I've put them onto this slide. Providing updates is really important. Android market's a really big place. As I said, there are over 150 million handsets out there. There are over 200 different kinds of handsets. And it's unlikely that you're going to be able to test on every single one of them before you ship your application. So it's important, when you first put your application on Android Market, to look at all those comments that come back and say, hey, it's crashing on my phone. What is that? What should I do? Well, the good thing is you're actually going to get a crash report for most devices. Everything froyo and up will often come back from the device, and you'll be able to see exactly, here's the call stack, here's where my application crashed. Often users will actually tell you what kind of phone they have. Now, beware, because they lie. You can't actually trust your users to actually tell you what phone they have. Like, even if they have a Droid, or they might be running CyanogenMod. They might be running some other cool hacky version. They might have some crazy software on it. So you have to be a little bit wary. But if you see 20, 30, 100 users saying this application crashed and I hate it and on my phone, and they say it's this phone, you're probably right. So you have to look at cloud-sourced information with a grain of salt. And of course, you know, test your application. There's a lot of people who have their application and they run it on one device and it works great, or they, you know, test it in the emulator and they publish it and then they realize it doesn't actually work. So how many of you have downloaded a paid application off of Android Market by hands? How many of you have downloaded a free application off of Android Market? Okay, there's a lot more of you. Truth is, users like free applications. We know this. Okay, so there's really three ways of making money. You can put a free app and you can use ads or affiliates. You can put a paid application up there, or you can use freemium, where you can use in-app purchases and in-app billing in order to charge people money after they've purchased the application. Now, my recommendation is use a combination of all of these. You know, because there are some users who are going to want a premium application. They don't want ads. They don't want to be troubled. There are some users who are going to be completely happy, put ads in my face all the time as long as I never have to pay for anything. And then there are users who are going to get hooked by your application, and they're going to want to buy stuff and make it cooler and use all those purchases that we have. And then you keep making money. It's not like a one-time transaction. You know, people, when they get invested in something, when they're emotionally attached to it, they're going to be willing to pay. There we have the new version of Market, and then we have the Android Market website. Now, do you guys have the new version of Market here? I don't think so, right? Not yet. Not unless you downloaded it off of XDA or something like that. Oh, you actually have it? Okay, that's good. We're in the process of rolling it out to the world, and it's pretty fun. It gives us a lot more ability to promote things, a lot more space. A lot of people ask me this question: How do those things show up there? Is it some cool Google formula? And no, there's a bunch of people whose job it is to try to find cool stuff on Android Market and put it up there. Well, actually, I don't think there's anyone whose full-time job it is. I think everyone kind of does it in their 20% time. But that's really what it is. There's actually a committee of people who go and get together and say, these are the cool applications that we know users are going to love. And so we get them featured. What we don't look for is a straight port. We like things that take advantage of the cool stuff Android can do, like live wallpapers and widgets and things that behave well with the user interface. Like when you hit the back key, it does something. You know, how many people have been frustrated because they've hit the back key in an application and it hasn't done anything? And they've had to hit the home key in order to exit. Then it feels like the application never really exits. And so then you try to get Advanced Task Killer out, and you go and kill off the application because it felt like it never closed. I hate that. Because one, I'm not a huge fan of Advanced Task Killer. That's not how things are supposed to work. You're supposed to back out of an application, and it's supposed to silently go away, and the user's not supposed to have to care about it. So make your applications work like Android applications. So here's the way we look at the life of an app on Android Market. It comes in, and you got 15,000 tests that an Android handset has to pass before it can get Android Market. And the reason why we do this is that we want to make sure, as much as we can, that when you publish an application to Android Market, that it is going to work on the handsets that are out there. So we very strictly limit the program to handsets that have passed our compatibility test. It's somewhere on Blogger, let's say. You know, and that gets it into trending. You know, you've got some people downloading it. Trending has got what we call a really short tail. So things go into trending really quickly. They come out of trending really quickly. Then we get into the top new free or top new paid. Okay, that's also really quick, but not as quick as trending. And that means that your application is actually liked by someone. Then we get into top free. Okay, again, a little bit less of a long chain. Now all of a sudden, a lot of people have seen your applications and liked it for a significant period of time. And then finally, we say, whoa, a lot of people like this app. We've noticed it sitting in the top free or top new free channel. Let's make sure our team looks at it. And we feature it. And then you also get to take advantage of related lists, like, you know, users who are like you, maybe, also viewed this and also installed this. And people start recommending it, and Well, maybe you have a paid app and it's top grossing. And now, a special program we announced earlier this year, we also recognize the best applications on Android Market by giving them editor's choice. Now, admittedly, there's very, very few applications that have gotten this, and that's partially intentionally and partially because it's just a lot of work. But hopefully, we're going to do more of those. And then if you do it over and over and over again, for a lot of applications that are popular with a lot of people, you become a top developer and you win the level. So that's the life of an application. And this finishes the marketing portion of our talk. So what I'm going to talk about is some developer features. We have added multiple APK. And what is multiple APK? Well, this is something that allows you to list multiple versions of your application under the same SKU on Android Market. It's going to help your downloads and your rating and hopefully the user experience in general as we go forward. So what are the use cases for this? You know, people say, this means there is fragmentation on Android Market. Well, okay, yes, there is, but that's not what this is designed to combat. There's really two issues. One is that we keep coming out with really cool platform features. You know, we've released Android Honeycomb now for tablets, and we have Ice Cream Sandwich coming soon, which is going to have all sorts of cool stuff we're going to want you guys to do. And we know that the more that you want to take advantage of those new features while keeping your application small and compatible with old versions of Android, the harder that's going to be. So what this allows you to do is say, you know, there are only 3% of people coming to Android Market that have Android 1.5 and 1.6. I'm going to take that version of the application and I'm going to leave it on there and encase it in carbonite like Han Solo. And I'm never going to touch it again. All right? Then the other thing you can do is you can make your application download smaller. Because one of the things that we've learned is that people like small downloads. They like it. They take less space on the device. And so we allow everything else in multiple APK we allow is for that purpose. You can use screen size and density. You can use texture format. And you can do these things to divide up your binary into different downloadable packages so that you can make the size smaller. Not everyone needs to do this. Most applications actually are going to do just fine. But this gives you the flexibility. That's the important thing. And you can go as far with this as you'd like. So how do we do it? Well, just like any other Android application, we create multiple packages using the developer tools. And then we have 3 vectors. We have uses SDK, supports screens and compatible screens, and supports GL texture. And because it's really confusing, I'm going to talk just a little bit about support screens and compatible screens. Because why do we have 2 tags that do the same approximate thing? Well, actually, they don't do the same thing, but they're close. Support screens only allow you to filter out a device with a smaller screen size. And a support screen is actually something that's understood by the platform. So the platform will actually throw your device, depending on what you do in that tag, into compatibility mode. And it can make it into a little tiny bubble on the screen, or it can make it into a full-size screen that stretches. And there's all sorts of stuff that the system tries to do to help you out there. In general, you don't want it to do that, but you can. Most importantly is that it allows you, while you can use this to have a different version for a large screen device and a different version for a small screen device, you have to rely on the fact that multiple APK uses the version of your application to determine which version is sent to the user. So let's say we had a version that was designed for large and extra large screens only. So first of all, we don't have to specify both of them, because if we say that it supports large screens, Android is going to assume that it supports extra large screens. But it will not assume that it'll support small or medium screens. So this will automatically get to only tablet devices and kind of larger phone-like devices. While this here, with small screens equals true, will get to every single Android device out there. So the only way that multiple APK can work is that that version that supports extra large screens has to be a higher version number than the one that supports small screens. And then Android Market will say, all right, well, there's 2 versions that can go to this device. We'll use the one that has the higher version number. And so this way you can actually control it with just support screens. However, if you want really, really fine-grained control, you can use compatible screens. That's the tag that says, go to only small and normal screens of any density. You can also say, you know what? I have no idea what my application is going to look like on a small-screened XHDPI device. I don't want it to show up. So you can do that too. Although you can always test that in the emulator. So, you know, it's not like it's impossible. And then finally, if you want it to show up just on tablets, that's what you can do there with the similar tag. So it's a little more verbose. It doesn't do anything to the platform. Unlike with support screens, which actually will make the platform behave in different ways, this is entirely ignored by the platform. This is only for the use of Android Market. But it allows you to have a lot of control, which is cool. All right, next thing is licensing service. And before we start talking about licensing, let's talk about piracy. Now, piracy is a reality. All platforms. And there are very dedicated pirates, and they have, turkey legs, and they have eye patches, and they walk around sort of like this, and they can't be stopped. Okay, we know that no matter what we do, people are going to figure out ways of getting around it. And so this isn't really our target audience. The guys with the parrots and the scars aren't going to buy our application. We know that. But we are trying to find these guys. Okay? They're hip. They got tattoos. They still have the eye patch. They got the hat. And they're a marketing opportunity. And you can and what's great about the way we do license validation is you can actually choose exactly what that user is going to see when they pirate your application. Like you could do this. All right, now this actually would work for me. Like if someone told me to die, I might go and buy their app. But I'm sure that this isn't going to work for everyone. So you can use another approach, for example. You can say, yo, you've spent a lot of time playing this game or using my app, and I've got kids, and you should really buy it. Because I've got mouths at home, and yeah, so use guilt. It works. I'm Catholic. Google provides this thing called the license verification library. And this is cool because, the idea is that we give you the power of exactly determining how you want this to look to the end user. And we'll talk about how to use it in good ways. So here's what it looks like. Basically, your application has a public key. The licensing server has a private key. And then we check the request, and it comes down, and it's a signed response with that private key that's only stored in Android Market. We don't ever give you the private key. We don't even know where the private key is. Someone sitting in some server in Iowa or something like that, and it never leaves. At least that's the idea. So no one else can recreate this signed response, hopefully. I believe in cryptography. It's kind of a faith thing. And then that's it. But here's the problem. People know that it works this way, and so they disassemble your application, and they throw that away, and they sign it themselves with, my junky signature, and they post it all over the place. So, we have to strengthen our defenses. All right? It's important. So here's a couple of things you can do. One is you can use an obfuscator, okay? Everyone should use one. It makes the application a little smaller. It may make it a little faster. It's important to do. Just in general, use one. Two, you can modify the license verification library code. Now, we gave out the license verification library as an example. And we said, do not put this in your application. Make modifications here. Please change this. And of course, we were stupid. Because we were targeting developers. And developers don't read the instructions. Everyone took that code and they copied it and they put it in their application. They said, all right. I'm now protected. So next time we need to make it not compile, at least in several places, but whatever. And then the other thing you can do is make the application tamper resistant. I'll go through these. So again, obfuscation is cool. We did something really dumb in the license library. Here's what we did. We bound to the service based upon the class name that was inside of the library. What that meant is you couldn't actually obfuscate the library. because the class name that was there was actually dependent on the inter-process communication that we used. So I recommend everyone make this change right there. If you do that, then you can get rid of the lines in the obfuscator. Oh, and when you make the change, you can perform a transform on it. You can base 64 encode it. You can break it up into little bits so that it's harder for someone to figure out that you're actually calling the licensing service in your code. It's good. You can make your application tamper resistant. So, a APK file is really just a version of a zip file. So, we have these signatures in it. You can see, is it the same signature I signed it with? You can check to see if it's debuggable. And you can use the fact that it's a zip file to actually get the CRC of your original code. And you can check to see, whoa, someone's tampered with that. That sucks. And it doesn't matter if they're using LVL or not. I mean, this has nothing to do with our license library. This is just, I've now checked to make sure that someone's not messed with me. Like someone's taken my app and they pulled the ads out. That sucks, You can figure that out. So we can also use reflection. So that's our previous example. And here's what it looks like with reflection. It is much harder to figure out what that second chunk of code is doing. I don't even know what it's doing. Admittedly, base 64, maybe not the best way of encoding something, but you can see that when someone is trying to look through a disassembled version of the code, they're going to have a much harder time understanding what that does. But pirates are not the biggest problem, because there's a lot of applications that have server-side components. And every time someone pirates that application, they start sucking down your bandwidth. And lamp biters are a big problem. So the good news is we showed you how everything works. Remember, there's a private key that sits on our server. There's a public key that sits in your application. And we gave you all the source code. So you can actually take that stuff that normally sits in the application, you can put it on your server. And yeah, you can get rid of vampires. So how do we do this? All right, so again, the private key sits on our server. The public key now sits on your server, not in your application. So the application has nothing to do with this. It just passes everything through. Then we send the request up. It comes back down. And it goes to your server. Your server then creates, let's say, a session. This is an example. And boom, you now have a session token, and you can start getting content. Very straightforward. This is actually what the code looks like on the server side that does the validation. Now again, this is inside of App Engine. You can use anything that allows you to host a servlet to do this. It's just Java code. And this is the license validator, and the other things are actually classes that come out of the LVL. So pretty straightforward. Now, for all of you guys who are cryptography nuts, there is actually a problem here, and that is replay attacks. So we actually have a nonce, a number that's used once. And when you create that transaction, you actually send that in. And that allows every signed response from the server to be different. This means someone just can't capture the response, shove it into your application, make a change, and make it work, because you are putting a nonce in each one of them, and you're going to track those with your server. You can either generate them on the server, or you can generate it on the client. But for one reason or other, you want to make sure those nonces don't get used again. And then it's really, really hard for someone to be a vampire with your server. So this is good. In-app billing. In-app billing is the #1 way for people to make money with paid applications on Android Market. The top grossing list of applications includes almost exclusively applications that are using in-app billing. And making money is good. I like money. So how do we do it? Well, you can either sell virtual goods that are managed by the server. You can sell unmanaged goods. And again, we can either validate these things on the client or with the server getting involved. So managed items are things that are like physical goods. They're virtual things that can only be purchased once. And the server actually helps you with them, because the server actually maintains a list of all of the SKUs that that person has purchased. Now, if you look at what you're actually allowed to do with in-app billing, we actually don't allow you to buy physical goods. It's not the intention of this API. if you want to sell physical goods on Android Market, use someone else's kit. That's not what we're about. We're about monetizing your application. This is the equivalent of selling your application on Android Market, but giving you the ability to sell it again. So we can do that through managed items. We can also do that through unmanaged items. And this is like selling currency, or selling, health or something like that, or time, something that's going to run out. The difference is that Android Market doesn't help you with it. Applications can't ask to replay this. So you're going to want to keep track of it to keep your users happy. You're going to want to use Android backup service so that when they reinstall their application, their purchases come back down with them. Or you're going to want to have your own server on the back end, which is helpful because it'll help you with preventing fraud. So here's what the client version looks like. And this looks a lot like the license validation. We've got the public key on the inside of the client and the private key in the server. We made things a little more sophisticated here. It's actually easier to pull this apart and put it on a server. We learned. So basically, you send the request over, it signs the response, you receive it, and boom, you have the item. Now, the server version looks pretty much the same, except we now, instead of actually using the application client to validate, we actually send that off to a server, and then we can do whatever we want with it. Now, again, let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail. So we request a purchase. Cool. It sends back down this, here are all the different things. Here's the bundle with the response code, the request, the ID, and we say, cool, let's do it. And the checkout UI comes up. And this is very, very important because, one, we want users to make sure that they are comfortable with buying things on Android devices. So there's a couple things. One, we display the standard UI, which looks like all of the other Android Market UIs. And this is Android Market. Remember, that's coming up here. It contains whatever credit card information the user has already put in. Not for you to look at, but so they know that it's there. It also, if their device manufacturer works with a carrier, it actually contains carrier billing options, which is really, really cool. So if you're in Japan, or if you're in the United States, or one of the carriers in Europe, you can just automatically say, they can pull that down, it builds it through their carrier. We pause your application. This is UI that sits on top. So we want to make sure when your application gets paused here that it does the right thing. You don't want it to necessarily kill the UI. You might want it to do something else. Especially if it's a game, it's very, very easy to make this really an awful experience. Then, obviously, they've completed the transaction. We resume. We keep going. We send you the purchase information. And then you confirm it. And this is really important because we want to make sure that when people buy something on Android Market, the user actually gets it. So we'll continue to send you these notifications again and again and again until you confirm them. Very, very important. And then finally, Android Market says, cool, all confirmed. Adding server side to this is pretty easy. We start off, let's say we request a nonce. Once again, we want to make these transactions unique. We return our session, and on the other side, we then auth on the server, make sure we validated the response, and then we send the notification. So license verification and in-app billing are just, one or two, I guess, of the cloud services that we have on Android Market. So consider how your application can make use of things like cloud-to-device messaging. So cool. Not having to run your application in the background and pull your server all of the time and waste the user's battery and show up in the list of offending applications that's causing their phone's battery life to suck. So definitely make use of it. Also, Android backup. It's just so cool that your application they lose their phone and they're sad, and then they get a new Android phone and your application comes back up and has all of their data. It's awesome. It means they're more likely to use your application and keep it on there. So definitely consider those two as well. And there's others as well. Cloud is cool. And that's it. We've just got a few minutes for questions. Oh, and there should be Android at Android LATAM. So that should be on this slide. I should edit that. In addition to my my Twitter and the general Android developer Twitter, Android LATAM. So we now have a few minutes for questions. Wow, everyone's speechless. Oh, yeah. Yes.
I want to know if maybe I have a application that is free and another one that is bigger, much bigger, and it's premium, like you have to pay.
Right.
And if you have the in-app billing, then you have like the free version and you can pay to get the premium, but the size of the application is going to be big.
Right. So the question is that you want to have two versions. You have a premium SKU and a free SKU, and you want the free SKU to be as small as possible. And what you want is when they buy it, that it actually allows you to download something larger, which is great. And unfortunately today, the way you have to do that is to do the license validation essentially with that SKU on your server. You've got to host that content. The good news is that at least if you do this technique correctly, all the downloads that are coming off of your server are actually going to be from legitimate customers. But that's the only way to do it today. I would like there to be a way to host additional content with in-app purchases, but currently there isn't. But you just have a secondary package, a secondary resource bundle. One of the things we are looking to come out with on Android Market in the future is also to support much larger applications in general. But the thing about a large application is that it causes more friction. People say there's a download and it's 30 megabytes or 50 megabytes, and they don't want to spend that kind of money or waste that kind of time. So it's always better if you can make the package smaller in the first place, and you can host the content secondarily. Any other questions? Well, maybe people need their coffee this morning. I know I need my coffee this morning. But if there's anything I would leave you with, is that Android Market has a lot of ability to promote your application, but you guys can do the work and really help out by promoting your applications outside of Android Market. Make sure you have a translated market listing, especially here. I mean, we've seen developers who don't even have a translated listing for their own country. It's really sad. I'm like, wait, you mean you did all the work to translate it into another language and then you didn't even bother to put it in? So yeah, so make sure, what's really exciting to me about Android is we're at a point where we have hundreds of thousands of applications on market. But we might not have an application that has awesome content if you're in Buenos Aires. And that's what I'm excited about, is that now we're seeing, I walked down here and I saw the giant poster for an Android phone as I walk down the street to get here. And people are getting excited. We're seeing great connectivity here in Argentina. And what I want to see is those people who are getting those devices excited about applications that have great content not only around the world, and not only do they have Angry Birds and Cut the Rope and all sorts of cool stuff like that, but they've also got great content here that delights them about stuff they can do in their own backyard. And that market's wide open. So if I leave you with anything, it's that make sure that you understand that there's an international audience and a local audience, and target for both of them, because it's just going to get bigger and more exciting. Anyways, thank you for coming this morning.